everyone, and thank you for watching today's video. Instead of doing another arpeggio video, I decided that I would rather change it up. I will get back to the arpeggios eventually, but for today, I was going to talk about how I learn and record my cover songs. This may not apply to you, but perhaps by learning about my routine, you can get some ideas, at least for your own routine. So I'm just gonna go ahead and go through the list of how I learn a pop song, or not even, it doesn't have to be pop, just a song in general, and how I go about writing that out, transcribing it, and recording it. The very first thing I do is I listen to the song a few times, which if you're already familiar with that pop song, you don't need to do that. The second thing I do is I figure out the form of the song, which is actually pretty easy if you're working with a pop song because they are not generally complicated forms and they're not usually through written. So they have verse 2, chorus, verse 3, bridge, chorus, some tag at the end. So it's pretty typical. It doesn't take that long to figure out the form. Just mark out the big sections. Just write it down like verse, comma, chorus, comma, whatever, just to get it down on paper. Once you have that, find the key of the song, go through the notes on the piano until you find the note that matches that song and the note feels like home. I don't have a better way to explain that. It's hard for me to explain to people who don't have a general understanding of music theory. But the best way to describe it to someone who doesn't really, they're not familiar with that, just whatever note feels like your home base. So when you're here, if the song is in the key of C, if you play a C on the piano, it's going to resonate. It's going to be like, okay, here we are. Yes, this is right. Hopefully those of you who are watching this video do have kind of a basic understanding of music theory. If not, this may not make much sense to you. And if you do need to get a better understanding, I do have plenty of tutorials on my YouTube channel that do talk about that a little bit, and I'm sure that there are a lot of other really good tutorials out there, so maybe go watch those first and then come back to this and it'll probably make more sense. And then after I determined what key I want it to be in, then I will figure out the correct time signature. So here are just some basic patterns. This is 4/4, so you have 4 beats in one measure. 1, 2, 3, 4, 1. So every time your hand goes down, that's the downbeat. That's the start of the measure. And then 3/4, again, downbeat. So 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3. And then you have 2, 2. So 1, 2, 1, 2. Those are going to be probably the most common. You also have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. So that would be your 6, 8. If you go through the beat patterns while you're listening to the song and just find whichever one fits best. For example, the song that I just did, Halo, watch what happens whenever I beat in 4. 1, 2, 3, 4, 1. Remember those walls I built? Baby, they're tumbling down. They didn't even put up a fight. They didn't even make a sound. So the melody is syncopated, so maybe that wasn't the best example to use, but 1, 2, 3, 4, 1. Like you feel it whenever you're beating it and you hear the song on top of it. It just makes a lot of sense, especially if you pay attention to the chord changes. Because in that song in particular, it's chord change 2, 3, 4, chord change 2, 3, 4. So it makes a lot more sense whenever you're listening to the full recording and you're beating along with it. Now, once you have your key, your time signature, the basic overall structure of the piece, this is when you can actually start writing something down and notating it on staff paper. The fastest way for me to do this is to transcribe the bass line first. So I'm going to hear the bass line, I'm going to listen to the recording, I'm going to pick out the notes of the bass line, and then that's what I'm going to write down first. Some people have a hard time hearing the bass line, they only hear the melody, or some people only hear the harmonies. Because I play cello, it's a lower instrument, I'm used to playing the bass line, my ear can pick that out easier. But if you play the violin, or if you sing harmonies in choir, that might be a little bit more tricky for you. That might mean that you have to practice a little bit more hearing that. That's when you can start writing in the chord symbols that are built on top of that bass line. Whatever the bass line is, the bass line does not always represent the root of the chord, if that makes sense. So here's the root, 3rd and 5th, the root here. The root is not always the bass line. And whenever you're writing out the chord symbols above the melody, whenever you write out your chord symbols, sometimes whenever you see a slash, so like a C over G, G is in the bass. G is not the root of the C chord. C is the root of the C chord, but we're going to be playing a G in the bass, even though the chord on top of it is a C. The next thing that I do after All of that is to notate the special lines, so the things that make that particular pop song unique in comparison to all the other pop songs that have the exact same chord progression, which we all know that they are all the same, 1 4 5 1, occasionally a minor 6 or a minor 2, but that's getting crazy. By a special line, I mean in an intro of, I don't know, an Adele song where it has a cool little like piano riff or something. That's something that I would notate out, because that isn't just a chord. It's, okay, here's an interesting melody line, so I'm going to write out this interesting melody line, and of course match it to the bass line that you already have written out. So put it in the right place, don't be putting it in random measures across the page. Just have it lined out as it would be listening to the song. I always find that it helps to write out the melody, but sometimes when I'm feeling particularly lazy, or if I am already very familiar with the melody, then I just won't bother doing that. It usually works out okay. If I want to have very specific harmony lines to go along with the melody, then I will definitely write out the melody. I will write out all of the melody, and then I will write out any of the harmonies that want to go along with that. For me, I treat the cello like another singing voice, and so the cello is going to be playing the harmony that someone might actually sing in a pop song. Does that make sense? I don't know if that made sense. But this is where I get to be really creative whenever it comes to covering a pop song. I get to write in lines that may not actually be there in the original, and that's kind of how I include classical elements into pop music, and I find that it adds a really unique element. After that, whenever I want to really start recording this into my recording program, I will pick a tempo, set the metronome, and if the song has a lot of rubato, so if it moves a lot and it has a lot of wibbly wobbly tempos, that's when you have to start getting into beat mapping. I don't know how many other programs can do that, but I do know that Logic can, and I use Logic. So I will go through and I will beat map on Logic and tell you, okay, the tempo goes down here, and then, oh, okay, we're going to speed up here. And what happens is that once you draw that beat mapping in, the metronome actually follows along with that. So you're still going to play with the metronome, but the metronome is following the pattern that you already set beforehand. Then after I have all of that set, what I do is I will go through and I'll record the bass line and any kind of heavy rhythmic part first. My music doesn't have a lot of percussion just because I can't keep a steady beat very well, and I'm horrible at all things percussion. I'm working on it. I'm getting better. But whenever I do have some sort of percussive element, if I'm even tapping on my cello, that always comes first. Bassline and percussion record first. Then I'll add in the filler parts, so like the special lines that I talked about before, that's what I would add on top of next. And then the vocal melody, the main line. And then once that's done, if I want to have a vocal harmony with that, then I will record that to match. And then after all of that is done, all you have to do is edit and mix to the best of your ability. So yeah, that's my process. And back whenever I was posting a cover video every single week to YouTube, which was insane, this is how I did that so quickly. This is the process that I used. I can't say that I was 100% happy with everything that I posted because I would rush so much to get them done, which is why I'm taking my time now, because I really want to put out a good product. But this process helped me at least get out this sketch of what I wanted to get across. So even if it wasn't a perfect recording, at least I was able to get out the idea, and I was able to do that every single week. So once you have this process and you craft it and you refine it to fit your particular style, it'll help you just get stuff done so much faster, and hopefully with excellence at the same time. That's the tricky part, but it takes practice, and at least you have a structural skeleton to build on, if that makes sense. I hope that today's video helped. I hope that I didn't go too fast, and I certainly hope that it wasn't confusing. I feel like it might have been. Sorry. If you have any additional questions or comments, please leave those in the comment section below. As always, love what you do, practice well, share it with others. Thank you for watching today's video, and stay tuned for next week's video.